Imagine this: a legendary Hollywood icon, a man celebrated for his quiet strength, his moral steadiness, and his unshakable dignity, leaves behind a handwritten note, a note no one knew existed, a note that would rewrite everything the world thought it understood about him. That man was Gary Cooper, the soft-spoken giant whose presence shaped American cinema for decades. Yet behind the calm voice and gentle eyes was someone carrying a lifetime of unspoken emotions, hidden regrets, and truths he never allowed the world to hear. Until that final confession on paper. Before that note surfaced, Cooper's legacy stood tall, a hero of the American West, a symbol of decency, a man whose silence spoke louder than the loudest performances around him. But the moment that note was opened, fans, historians, and even his closest friends realized there was far more to the man than the roles he played. The note didn't simply reveal a secret. It revealed the heart of Gary Cooper, the part he guarded so fiercely that it only found freedom after he was gone. And to understand why that note mattered so deeply, we must go back to where his story began. A boy named Frank James Cooper, born under the vast Montana sky, destined for a life he never planned, shaped by landscapes that carved themselves into his soul. This is the real Gary Cooper, the man behind the legend, the truth behind the silence, and the confession he left behind that changed everything. Gary Cooper entered the world on May 7, 1901, in the rugged town of Helena, Montana, a place where the sky felt endless and the land seemed carved for people of quiet determination. Born Frank James Cooper, he grew up among wide-open prairies, sprawling ranches, and the untamed wilderness of the American West. These early surroundings didn't just shape his childhood, they forged the essence of the man the world would later admire. His days were filled with the rhythms of Western life, horseback riding, ranch work, and a deep connection to the outdoors. These weren't skills he learned for fame or performance. They were simply part of living in Montana, yet later, on the silver screen, they became his signature. The reason audiences believed every cowboy he played was real, that natural ease, that authenticity, it all came from the boy who once galloped beneath the Montana sun. But Cooper didn't always imagine Hollywood in his future. In fact, his early path seemed to lead him anywhere but acting. His parents sent him to school in England, where he absorbed discipline, literature, and the polished manners of British education, a sharp contrast to the dusty West he called home. Later, he attended Grinnell College in Iowa, pursuing academics and athletics until an injury abruptly halted his athletic dreams. Returning to Montana after this setback, Cooper found himself in a quiet period of reflection. With physical limitations keeping him from sports, he turned to sketching and writing, creative sparks he had never allowed himself to explore deeply. For the first time, he began to imagine a life shaped not by ranching or athletics, but by art. Everything changed when he traveled to Los Angeles in the mid-1920s. What was supposed to be a brief stay, a simple attempt to find work as an illustrator, became the turning point of his life. Hollywood wasn't his plan, but fate rarely follows plans. Thanks to his genuine horsemanship and unshakable calm, Cooper was hired as a stunt rider and an extra in silent Western films. He appeared quietly in the background, never imagining that these small dusty roles were the first steps toward one of the most iconic careers in American cinema. At the time, he was just a young man trying to make ends meet, unaware that he was walking straight into a destiny. By the late 1920s, something extraordinary began to happen. What started as small background roles, riding horses, performing stunts, appearing silently behind the real stars, slowly transformed into a spotlight Gary Cooper never expected but was destined to claim. Studios began noticing him, not because he demanded attention, but because he didn't. His quiet magnetism, his steady posture, the sincerity in his eyes, these qualities made him stand out in a world filled with loud personalities and exaggerated performances. When talking pictures arrived, Cooper's warm, slightly hesitant voice became one of his most powerful tools. Unlike many actors of the early sound era, whose theatrical speech felt artificial, his voice carried authenticity. It was the voice of a man who chose his words carefully, calm, thoughtful, genuine. Audiences listened not because he raised his volume, but because he carried truth in every syllable. His breakthrough came swiftly. Films like A Farewell to Arms, 1932, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, 1936, Sergeant York, 1941, and High Noon, 1952, didn't just make him famous, they shaped an American ideal. On screen, he became the embodiment of the principled man, the one who spoke softly but acted decisively. He was the reluctant hero, the man whose courage came from conscience rather than bravado. People didn't admire his characters because they were perfect. They admired them because they were honorable. And that honor, that stillness, felt unmistakably like Cooper himself. His peers recognized his power too. He earned 2 Academy Awards for Best Actor and eventually received a 3rd honorary Oscar, acknowledging not just individual performances, but a lifetime of contribution to the art of film. Yet even more striking than the awards was the influence he left on future generations. Actors like Clint Eastwood, Kevin Costner, and Daniel Day-Lewis openly praised him. They studied his restrained emotional control, his ability to say more with one thoughtful glance than others could with a full monologue. Cooper proved that minimalism wasn't weakness, it was mastery. Beyond Hollywood lights, Gary Cooper remained remarkably humble. He lived quietly, valuing loyalty, honesty, and simplicity far more than glamour. Friends often described him as shy, grounded, and deeply loyal, the kind of man who preferred intimate conversations to grand events. His friendships with icons like Ernest Hemingway and James Stewart revealed a reflective soul who cherished intellectual curiosity as much as he cherished friendship. The world saw a star. Those who knew him saw a gentle, complex man who carried his integrity like a second skin. Gary Cooper's marriage to Veronica Rocky Cooper was far more than a Hollywood partnership. It was the emotional anchor of his private life, the one relationship that revealed who he truly was behind the quiet smile and the on-screen heroism. Their story began in 1933, at a moment when Cooper's fame was rapidly rising. Reporters followed his every step. Studios relied on his growing star power, and audiences viewed him as the symbol of American decency. Amid all this noise, Veronica brought something he desperately needed: balance. Veronica Balfe, known among friends simply as Rocky, came from a world entirely different from Cooper's Montana upbringing. She was a poised New York socialite, raised among refinement, art, culture, and equestrian traditions. Yet her elegance never felt intimidating. Instead, it met Cooper's gentle nature with grace and quiet confidence. Her intelligence and independence captivated him far more deeply than glamour or fame ever could. Their wedding became a celebrated social event, a blending of Hollywood elites and East Coast aristocracy. But beneath the spectacle lay something more intimate. Cooper had found someone who didn't need to be impressed, someone who saw him not as an icon, but as a man. Off-screen, Rocky challenged him in ways the world never witnessed. She broadened his horizons, introducing him to artists, writers, and thinkers who expanded his worldview. She understood his shyness, protected his vulnerabilities, and strengthened his sense of dignity. To Cooper, she was not merely a partner, she was his grounding force, the one who steadied him when fame threatened to pull him away from himself. But their marriage was not without storms. Cooper's infidelity, most famously his affair with actress Patricia Neal, shook the stability of their home and brought emotional turmoil that Rocky endured quietly. Hollywood gossip swirled, the tabloids took aim, and friends wondered whether their marriage could survive such wounds. And yet, Rocky stayed, not out of dependency, not out of fear, but out of an unwavering belief that the man she married was more complex, more gentle, more wounded than the public ever knew. She understood his inner contradictions, the shy boy from Montana trapped inside a global icon. She chose to stand by him, not because the world expected it, but because she saw the pieces of him that needed protection. In 1937, they welcomed their daughter Maria, and Rocky embraced motherhood with deep devotion. Even during periods when she and Cooper lived semi-separate lives, she ensured that Maria's love and admiration for her father remained strong. She shielded their daughter from scandal, from Hollywood's harsh spotlight, and from the emotional fractures that fame often created. In Cooper's final years, when illness slowly stripped him of the vitality that had defined him, Rocky's loyalty shone brightest. She cared for him through his long battle with cancer, offering quiet strength and unwavering compassion. Even after years marked by distance and pain, she held his hand through the hardest moments of his life. After his death, Rocky carried his memory with dignity, never exploiting their marriage for attention, never distorting the story. She honored him in silence, just as he had lived much of his life. To many, she became known as the one person who truly understood Gary Cooper's soul. For decades, Hollywood historians and devoted fans sent us something unspoken beneath the surface whenever Gary Cooper and Ingrid Bergman appeared together. Their on-screen chemistry was electric, undeniable, almost haunting in its depth. But no one, not audiences, not studios, not even close friends, fully understood just how deeply Cooper was affected by Bergman. Not until a handwritten note was discovered among his personal papers after his passing. The note was quiet, intimate, and achingly vulnerable, written in Cooper's unmistakable voice. It revealed truths he had carried silently for years, truths he never dared say aloud in interviews, in public, or even to those closest to him. "I never wanted the world to misunderstand what she meant to me," he wrote. With those words, the carefully crafted image of the stoic cowboy, the man who spoke little and revealed even less, cracked open. The confession reshaped everything historians believed about their connection. Cooper and Bergman had worked together on For Whom the Bell Tolls, a film that transformed both their careers. But for Cooper, it did more than elevate his status. It changed him. In the note, he described Bergman as a presence he couldn't hide from, someone pure and frightening at the same time. Her dedication, her emotional intelligence, her ability to be utterly genuine in an industry built on illusion. It pierced straight through him. She saw right through me, Cooper admitted. Not the actor, not the cowboy hero. Me. Those close to him had long sensed contradictions beneath his calm exterior. The shy Montana boy buried inside the Hollywood legend, the gentle soul forced into the spotlight, the private man living a public life. But Bergman recognized those fractures instantly, long before anyone else could. Their relationship remained bound by circumstances, responsibilities, and the tight grip of the old Hollywood etudio system. They were connected deeply, but confined to a friendship that was almost sacred in its restraint. I wished things were different, Cooper wrote, but sometimes life gives you moments, not miracles. And those moments stayed with him for the rest of his life. Even as he navigated fame, marriage, fatherhood, and the mounting pressures of a legendary career, Bergman lingered in the quiet corners of his heart. He never exploited their connection. He never romanticized it publicly. He simply carried it privately, quietly, forever. One of the most revealing lines in his note exposed years of internal conflict. I should have told her what she meant to me. I thought silence was nobility. Maybe it was just fear. Fear of a scandal, fear of vulnerability, fear of unraveling the lives they both had already built. His silence became part of the myth, but also part of the tragedy. In the end, Cooper concluded with a sentiment so simple and so human that it redefined their story. Some people pass through your life. Some stay with you forever. Ingrid stayed. In 1961, the world lost one of its greatest cinematic icons. Gary Cooper, the man whose quiet strength had defined an era, passed away at just 60 years old. His death was not unexpected. His battle with cancer had been long and grueling, but the emotional impact was immediate and profound. Hollywood and millions of admirers worldwide felt as though a steady light had suddenly gone out. For decades, Cooper had represented the very essence of American heroism. Calm, moral, unwavering. Fans believed that his strength would last forever, but behind that serene exterior, he had been fighting a devastating illness. What began as prostate cancer gradually spread to his lungs and bones, slowly weakening the vitality that had made him a symbol of endurance. He faced the disease with the same quiet resilience that shaped his career. He rarely complained, rarely allowed others to see the depth of his suffering. But those closest to him, especially Veronica Rocky Cooper, knew the truth. Treatments were painful, the decline was relentless, and the man who once stood so tall now spent long stretches confined to rest. When Cooper finally passed, Hollywood mourned with extraordinary tenderness. Directors, actors, and lifelong fans poured out tributes. Many spoke not of his fame, but of his humility, his decency, his gentle spirit. His funeral became a gathering filled with both sorrow and reverence, attended by the people who had known him both on and off the screen. At first, Cooper was buried in California near the industry that had transformed his life and given him global recognition. His grave became a small place of pilgrimage. Fans would leave flowers, handwritten letters, and tokens of gratitude, honoring the man who had shaped generations of storytelling. But the story of his final resting place did not end there. After years of reflection, Rocky made a deeply personal decision, one that revealed how intimately she understood the man behind the legend. She arranged for Cooper's body to be moved across the country to Sacred Heart Cemetery in Southampton, New York. This choice wasn't made lightly. It came from her belief that Hollywood's bright lights and constant commotion didn't reflect who Cooper truly was. Beneath the fame, he remained the quiet Montana boy who loved open skies, solitude, and the gentle rhythms of nature. Sacred Heart Cemetery offered exactly that, a peaceful sanctuary, a place where the wind moves softly through the trees, a landscape far removed from the noise that had surrounded him throughout his career. Rocky believed he deserved a resting place that honored the quieter parts of his soul, the thoughtful, introspective man who felt most at home in simplicity. And so, in Southampton, far from the cameras and crowds, Gary Cooper finally found the tranquility he had always cherished. Gary Cooper's story is more than the rise of a Hollywood legend. It is the journey of a quiet man who carried extraordinary depth behind his gentle eyes, a man shaped by the wild silence of Montana, a man who loved deeply, sometimes imperfectly, a man who left behind a confession that revealed the human heart hidden beneath the hero. His legacy endures not only through his films, but through the honesty, restraint, and dignity he brought to every role and every relationship. Even now, decades after his passing, his presence still lingers. His note still echoes. His truth still moves us. If the life of Gary Cooper touched you today, if his story made you see the man behind the myth more clearly, then let this be your moment to keep his memory alive, like the video, so more people can rediscover forgotten Hollywood legends. Share it with someone who still believes in the power of quiet heroes. And subscribe to our channel for more untold stories, hidden confessions, and profound moments from the golden age of cinema. Your support helps these timeless stories live on. Thank you for watching, and remember, some legends fade, but the truth behind them never dies.